So let me get this straight. You're offering me a position on a TV game show where thousands of people are going to try and kill me, including automated robots. And the only prizes that you can offer include a toaster, a brand new car, and a VCR. Do you even know what year it is? Hello everyone, welcome to Good Gaming Network. I'm Brian, also known as UK Jens Zoidberg, and in a previous life I used to be a writer for various games magazines, including Amiga Action and Games X. During this time I reviewed many games across multiple formats, but it's always been the Commodore Amiga that's been closest to my heart. In this series I'm going to be taking a look back at all of the games that I covered during this time to see whether or not I got it right first time around. I'll include a little bit of information about the game and who made it along the way. Hopefully you'll find it entertaining. In this episode, I'm going to be going back to the arcades once more to take a look at the Amiga version of Smash TV, converted by Probe Software for Acclaim Entertainment, and published in the UK by Ocean Software in 1991.
Total carnage! I love it!
Smash TV was released in the arcades in 1990 by Williams Entertainment. Co-created by Eugene Jarvis, who had previously produced both Defender and Robotron, it was a futuristic twin-stick shooter, heavily inspired by the likes of Rollerball and The Running Man, where players took part in a hyper-violent TV game show. Success in the arcades naturally led to versions being produced for home consoles by Acclaim Entertainment, with Ocean Software handling the publishing duties on the home computer versions. These conversions were produced by Probe Software, whose history I've covered previously on the re-review when I talked about Outrun Europa. So let's instead concentrate on the person who programmed it this time around. Chances are you may not have heard the name Zara Johannes before, but as far as I'm concerned he deserves to be mentioned alongside all of the big Amiga developers that you can think of. He was always credited simply by his initials of ZZKJ, and if you were a fan of racing games, like me, then you'll definitely know his work. He first became known to me as a contributor to Your Sinclair magazine, where you would regularly see his name appear in the game's cheats and tips pages. His contributions included computer programs for readers to type in, including trainers, or pokes as they were called at the time, for popular games, most famously a hacking program and character designer for the Spectrum version of Elite. It wasn't long before such programming talent would get him noticed, and in 1987 he found himself working with Software Studios, the in-house developer for Activision, on conversions of Sega's Super Hang-On. I can remember playing the Spectrum version of this one to death on release, but he was also responsible for the Amstrad, Atari ST and Amiga versions. They really are excellent conversions too, retaining all the playability and speed of the arcade original. When you compare this to the Amiga versions of Outrun and Chase HQ, which weren't released until the following year, it really makes you wonder what might have been. Next came the near impossible task of trying to convert Power Drift to the Atari ST and Amiga, again working with Software Studios. The result is an undeniably impressive achievement, being as close to the arcade original as you could possibly get on the Amiga, although the game itself is not actually that much fun to play. Following his work on the Amiga version of the popular Harley-Davidson game for the PC, published by Mindscape, he would then start working with Probe Software, providing support for their strategy game Supremacy. However, it was the conversion of yet another Sega game that would prove to be his best game to date. Super Monaco Grand Prix for the Amiga is a fast, challenging and playable racing game that I reviewed when it received its budget release in 1992, giving it a thoroughly deserved 91%. Smash TV followed that, and was to unfortunately be his last game developed for the Amiga. An excellent version of Bullfrog Syndicate for the Sega Mega Drive would follow, and this began a time of working as a programmer for EA, working on games such as Superbikes 2000 and FIFA Road to the World Cup 98. Since then, he has moved away from games development altogether, and today sits as company director of ZZKJ Consulting, working in the field of satellite communication. A far cry from those early days working for the ZX Spectrum, I think you'll agree. So what did I think about Smash TV when I first played it? Let's dig out my original review and find out.
Big money! Big prizes!
My review appeared in issue 28 of Games X from October 1991, the same issue as my Alien Breed review that I covered in the first ever re-review. While I stated that there was some fun to be had from the game's mindless shooting, the repetitive nature of it would mean that you would get bored of it quite quickly. I compared the lack of gameplay variety to Ocean's conversion of Narc, which had come out the year before, and ironically was based on another Eugene Jarvis original, which I didn't know at the time. This resulted in a score of 11 out of 20 for lastability and 12 out of 20 for the gameplay. Presentation fared slightly better, as it emulated the look and sound of the arcade original pretty well. I gave a score of 14 out of 20. Overall, the score I gave was 3.5 X's out of 5. A lot of satisfaction can be had legging it around the room, blowing away thousands of bad people. Sadly, this isn't enough. Now let's replay the game to see how it stacks up all these years later.
Good luck! You'll need it!
So if you don't know what Smash TV is, if you've never experienced the arcade machine, it's essentially a twin-stick shooter where you just fight your way through screen after screen of enemies in order to win a TV game show. So what I have done on here is I've programmed in. There were 2 keyboard controls for when you play it with the single fire button. One which was the left Amiga key on the keyboard that would, when you tap that, would turn on the ability to strafe, such as this. And then there was the left Alt key that turned on reverse fire as well. So if you move to the right, you'll fire left. Not the most elegant of gameplay solutions, but it works. The firing of your standard weapon is not really strong enough. So I find that the way to survive on Smash TV is to always try and get the power-ups as quickly as you can before they disappear. Like most twin-stick shooters, it's more about ensure that you stay moving. And I've also noticed that on this Amiga version that you actually have more lives when you start the game than you do on the arcade original. I think in converting this to the Amiga, they've made sure that the essence of Smash TV is still here. So the speed, the gore, those are all the things that you would want. They're all still present and correct. One thing I always found annoying about Smash TV is that when you pick up this power up with the spinning blades around you, you still can't move to the edge of the screen because of how much space the blades take up. Always wound me up, that. Even in the arcade original. So in an interview with Amiga Power at the time of this game's release, ZZKJ did actually point out that a number of the changes that were made were deliberate concessions to make the Amiga version a better game. So, although arcade purists will probably be upset at some of the things that this game did, had they been left in the Amiga version, would have been a worse game, apparently. There was also quite famously a public domain version of this called Smash TV The Rip-Off, which visually is not as good as this, and I think a lot of Amiga owners do actually prefer that to the official arcade conversion. I was never a fan, to be honest. My biggest issue with this game is the difficulty spikes. So the actual boss fights themselves are just ridiculous. Like, you can get here having lost hardly any lives and then just lose them all on the boss fight, and that happens more regularly than you would want. I need to try and get out from this corner, but it's ridiculous because The only way to harm him is to shoot him with one of the power-ups. Oh, no way. Well, that's not too bad. I've managed to get here with my continue still left all to the boss fight, but let's see how I can manage with 7 lives this time. Oh, no, he's still not dead, even though his head's gone. Have I done it? Yay, I've actually completed level 1. So, level 2. Let's see what level 2 has to offer. Well, it seems to have topped up my lives back to 7 again. That's an unexpectedly nice thing for it to have done. I've got 4 credits now. Hey, that's good. That's an even more unexpected surprise. It's the one power-up that seems to last the required amount of time is the shield, and you really do have to make the most of it by running through as many enemies as you can while you've got it activated.
10 seconds. Contestant 1.
No wonder it's giving me so many credits. It's just the game's just suddenly got a lot harder. See, although this is the best control method that the Amiga version of the game has to offer, it's still not
Good luck. You'll need it.
it's still not as good as the control method on Llamatron, where I don't know if you've ever played Llamatron. It fires continuously for you at all times, and holding down the fire button is what you do in order to strafe. So I don't know if it's because this game's been designed for was originally designed for a two player simultaneous, or it's just the bad design of the bosses, but you just never seem to be able to run fast enough to get under them to get to the other side. Oh, game over again. Right, there we go. So I think that's going to be enough gameplay from that then. Right, so I think that's enough. So that's Smash TV on the Amiga. Let's get to my final comments on what I think of it today.
I'd buy that for $1.
A common feature of all games developed by ZZKJ, apart from a high score table allowing 4 initials rather than the usual 3 for obvious reasons, was giving the player a choice of control methods. In my opinion, this made him an ideal choice to handle the Amiga version of Smash TV. While neither of the 2 options here are ideal, I remember the 2 joystick option working really well at the time of release, but only because I had 2 joysticks that had suckers on the bottom that meant I could stick them to the desk. When playing it on the A500 Mini, the single button option is by far the best, as you can program the keyboard toggles for strafing and reverse firing onto the shoulder buttons. Unfortunately for the game, it released just a few months after Jeff Minter's Llamatron, which demonstrated perfectly how to make this kind of game with a single fire button. I'm going to use this opportunity to apologise for comparing it to Narc first time around, which was an utterly shoddy conversion, and this is a far better game than that, although it's still not as good as fans of the arcade original would want it to be. The reduced screen size I can handle, But the changes to the collision detection, designed to make the game more forgiving for Amiga players, actually made the game worse. Bullets regularly appear to pass through enemies or simply not damage them when it appears as though they should. When the action is at its most frantic, this is not always noticeable, but during the boss fights, when accuracy is sometimes required, it can be particularly bad. Finding other Amiga games similar to this one was quite a tricky task, but here's a league table anyway, showing you how they compare. My score first time around was 3.5 out of 5 or 7 out of 10. Today I'd probably give it a 6, as it's definitely flawed, but still enjoyable. That brings us to the end of another re-review. I hope you've enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed making it. All the opinions expressed in this video are entirely mine, so if you do disagree with anything that I've said, then please feel free to post them in the comments. All opinions are welcome here at UK Gaming Network. You could also find me over on Twitter at UKGenZoidberg. If you enjoyed this video, then all of previous episodes are available in a playlist right here on our channel. I'm going to be back in 2 weeks' time with another episode, and if you want a little musical hint of the game I'm going to be playing, just stick around to the end of this one. If you enjoy what we do, then please do give us a like and subscribe. It helps support the channel and lets YouTube know that you enjoy our content. It also means that you won't miss out on the next video. So until next time, happy retro gaming. See you soon.